Karen tried to repo my wheelchair ramp by Friday. I brought receipts and the fire marshal. I'll start with the ramp because that's where everything blew up. It's a simple cedar ramp on my front porch with quiet, grippy strips and a gentle slope. I built it so my mom, Lita, could roll from the van to the living room without that scary little hop she used to do. She's tiny. You know, the kind of woman who can make chicken soup cure heartbreak. But stairs beat her up after the second fall last winter. I'm a paramedic. I've seen too many just one more step stories end bad. So I measured. I planned. I pulled a permit. And I built. We moved to Sandpiper Grove thinking it was friendly. Coastal town. Salt in the air. Bougainvillea exploding over fences. People wave when they drive by. Even if, they don't exactly mean it. Our HOA president was no shock here. Karen Delaney. Platinum bob. Pastel blazer, even on Saturdays. Pearls like she awake slept in a country club. She loved standards. She loved saying standards more than she loved the actual neighbors. And she hated surprises. 2 days after the ramp went up, a letter arrived with her careful signature at the bottom like a knife. Immediate removal. Demanded. The reason non-conforming structure visible from the street. If not removed by Friday at 5 in the evening, fines would start at $500 per day, plus administrative cost, plus legal reserve surcharge, whatever that is. And then the kicker lien eligible. I read it 3 times. Then a 4th. You've got to be kidding me. I muttered to nobody. Mom patted my arm. Drink water first, she said. Then fight. So I walked the paper over to Karen's house. She answered in tennis whites. Even though it was raining. Which, yeah, that tracks. I kept my voice steady. The ramp is an accommodation. I have a permit. It's temporary. And it matches the house. Her smile never touched her eyes. It's visible, she said. We have standards. I have a letter from the city building department. Stamped, I said, holding it up. Filed on May 20th. Receipt number at the top. The inspector's scrawl at the bottom. Karen glanced like it might stain her. We're private, she said. Brisk. We don't answer to the city. Ma'am, I replied. You can't override federal accessibility law. Her lips tightened. You can bring that up at the compliance hearing on Wednesday at 6 in the evening. There it was. The clock. Level 1 of the harassment ladder is always petty first. It's never a bulldozer on day 1. It's the letters. It's the photos. It's the drive-bys. 2 mornings later, I found a neon orange notice zip-tied to my mailbox trash bin exposure. Even though my can was tucked behind a little lattice screen, Mom painted the color of warm bread that afternoon. A volunteer with a neon vest. Clipboard trembling. Measured my grass. My grass then wrote 1/2 inch beyond approved height. I wish I were kidding, he whispered as he walked away. Sorry, man. She tracks our routes. Still, I collected receipts because, that's what you do when the story's about to turn. I kept the neon notice. I printed my permit again. I saved the email from the inspector temporary ramp compliant as built. I even pulled our deed and highlighted an easement line that mattered later. I'm not trying to foreshadow like a telenovela. But yeah, it mattered. Wednesday came fast. The boardroom was this beige rectangle behind the pool. Air conditioned so hard, your thoughts stuttered. Karen sat at the head like a minor monarch. 2 board members flanked her, Greg. who always looked like he was smelling something disappointing, and Linda, whose smile said she'd rather be at Pilates. A dozen neighbors filled the folding chairs. Some curious, some bored, some already angry because they'd been primed by posts in the community app. New resident flaunts rules. Structure lowers property values. Ambulance parked overnight. That last one was my work rig parked there for one night after a double shift when the bay had a water leak. I'd left a note on the windshield apologizing. Didn't matter. The app had a field day. Karen banged a little gavel sourced from the land of tiny gavels. Mr. Reyes, she began. You were notified of a non-conforming structure. I placed my packet on the table. Permit from the city. Photos of compliance. Email from Officer Jeannie Ortiz. Building inspections. Letter from mom's physician describing mobility needs. And under the federal law that, I'm sure you're familiar with. The HOA must make reasonable accommodations. Karen flipped a page like it might bite. We are not required to allow unsightly constructions that reduce curb appeal. I took a breath. Here's an email from you, I said, sliding a printout over, dated last Friday. Let's get a crew to remove it before the weekend. Don't alert the owner. You accidentally sent that to me wrong, Noah. I guess. A ripple in the room. Karen's smile stiffened. We often discuss compliance logistics. Logistics, I repeated. At dawn, she waved one hand. We'll table that. The hearing will resume after we view the property. Meeting adjourned. It wasn't adjourned. But the board stood up anyway. Karen loved theater more than rules. Level 2 hit at dawn. Like always. There's something about early light that bullies think makes them look official. Thursday morning. 5 minutes after 6. My doorbell chimed, the cheerful tone Mom picked. On the ring display, 3 people in matching polos with iron-on badges stood on my porch. The middle one was Greg. The badges said compliance officer, which is a cute title when you're not the law. I opened the door but kept the deadbolt. Morning, I said. Open access for inspection, Greg announced, reading off a laminated card. Behind him, a man with a toolbox smirked. The woman held a folded aluminum ramp panel, which irony looked a lot more unsightly than the cedar one I built. You do not have consent, I replied, and you do not have a warrant. Also, you're being recorded. We have HOA authority, Greg said. Failure to comply escalates fines. I smiled without humor and lifted my phone. Officer Ortiz, I said, tapping speaker. Building inspections. Jeannie, she answered. Voice, warm, with caffeine. Good morning, I said. I've got HOA volunteers saying they'll remove a permitted ramp. Through the speaker. Jeannie's tone snapped to official. No one touches permitted work. You call the actual police if they try. Also, ADA accommodations are protected. Tell them I'm heading over. Greg swallow blinked. The toolbox guy muttered. We can come back. Fantastic idea, I said, and closed the door. My mom rolled into the hallway. Hairnet tilted. Robe patterned with tiny lemons. You okay? We're okay, I said. Drink water first, she teased. Like she always does. At 9. I printed another receipt, a supplemental letter from Jeannie on city letterhead. Signed with a swoop, you can't fake. At noon, Karen posted a blown-out photo of my porch in the app, cropped to make the ramp look steeper, darker, and meaner. Safety hazard, she wrote. Irresponsible. The comments, filled with people who hadn't seen my home, saying, "Standards, standards," and one brave soul asking, "Can someone explain how a ramp hurts anyone?" That comment vanished after 10 minutes. But screenshots, yeah. I saved them. By afternoon, the rumor machine had upgraded me from rule breaker to aggressive. Someone claimed I yelled at volunteers. Someone claimed my mom glared at a child. My mom, who bakes pandacel for the mail carrier. Sorry, no. Then I found the second letter. Tucked in the screen door, final notice. Removal Friday at 9 in the morning. They were not going to wait for any ruling. They were going to make their own. They always do right before they learn why that's a mistake. I didn't sleep much Thursday. Neither did the neighborhood. At 5 in the morning, sprinklers whispered. At 6, gulls argued above the oaks. At 7, a lawn crew hummed 3 houses down. At 8:45, a white truck idled at the corner. 2 men in matching shirts unloaded a reciprocating saw and a pry bar. One of them, a guy I'd seen fixing Karen's deck last month. At 8:55, I placed my receipts on the console table like talismans. Permit, physician letter, inspector letter, photos. Deed with easement highlighted the part that says, the strip of land alongside my front path is, surprise, a public utility easement. Which means the HOA can't plant a hedge there, can't build there, and definitely can't block a city wheelchair access. That line would matter in exactly, like 10 minutes. At 8:57, I hit the little red button on my keychain. Panic alarm. Not the car. Not the house. My medical alarm tied to dispatch. There's a thing paramedics get for high-risk addresses when we've had threats. It doesn't bring a SWAT team. It just pings the nearest patrol and flags the call to keep body cams rolling. A dispatcher's voice came softly through my phone. Confirm panic at the Reyes residence. Confirmed. I said. No injuries. HOA, attempting forced removal of permitted medical accommodation. Units en route. She said. Time 8:57. At 8:59, the white truck guys started up the walk. Saw whining to life. At 9 exactly, they raised the saw, and the fire marshal's SUV turned the corner. God, I love timing. Jeannie rolled up too. City badge visible. Behind her, a patrol car slid to the curb. Lights quiet. And then a second car, because the dispatcher knows our HOA by name now. Which is some record. Karen emerged in flats and fury. This is outrageous, she announced to the air. Private property rights. Fire Marshal Cody stepped out in a navy jacket. He had the weary face of a man who's seen one too many candles left under curtains. Whose order is this? He asked. Nodding at the saw, Karen lifted a folder. Board authorization for removal of a non-conforming structure. Cody glanced at Jeannie. She lifted her letter. Permitted. Inspected. ADA accommodation. She tapped the logo. City supersedes HOA on safety. Karen's smile calcified. We're not the government, so federal statutes don't apply. Every cop eyebrow in a 3-house radius went up. Cody took 1 step. Then 2. To the hydrant down the sidewalk and smacked the cap with his palm. Also, your hired crew is blocking access to a hydrant. State Fire Code says, keep a clear radius. Move the truck now. The saw guys looked suddenly very interested in moving trucks. I pointed to the easement line on my printed deed. And this here strip is a public utility easement. HOA can't direct work on it without city authorization. Jeannie nodded. Which you don't have. Karen's voice went brittle. You don't understand how our community works. Cody checked his watch. Ma'am. I understand codes. And I understand that if a permitted medical ramp gets cut down and someone gets hurt, it becomes my fire scene and your liability. Karen looked at the neighbors gathering with cell phones. She recalculated and smiled like the hero of the movie in her head. We're simply concerned for safety, she said, quietly. Great, I said, keeping my own smile small. Then, we'll talk tonight at the meeting. She blinked. Tonight, special meeting, I said, called by 1/3 of the membership. I raised a stack of pages with signatures. You ignored the petition I emailed. So I hand-delivered. See the timestamp at the bottom filed yesterday. Receipts again. People keep underestimating paper. At 6 in the evening. The rec room was packed so tight, the snack table shivered. I'd borrowed the library projector. I'd also borrowed my friend Jamie's ability to time a reveal. Mom sat in the front row wearing her lemon robe, don't judge. It's her power outfit, and a sweater. She looked small and strong at the same time. Neighbors lined the back wall. Some arms crossed. Some wild-eyed. Some ready to leave if there wasn't drama. There would be drama. Karen opened with a speech about cohesion. She said curb appeal so many times, it lost meaning. She brought up resale and comparables, and the phrase, community fabric, which sounded like a scented candle no one wants. Then she called me up with the tone you use for a child who drew on the wall. I rolled the projector cart like a barista, bringing steel-cut oatmeal to a very specific table. I plugged in the HDMI, took a breath, and started. Slide one photo of the ramp in daylight. No weird shadows. No drama. Just cedar and a gentle slope. Temporary medical accommodation. I said. Permitted. Inspected. Here's the stamp. Slide 2. The city letter Jeannie emailed me that morning. On letterhead. Signature big. City jurisdiction on safety and accessibility. Slide 3 physician letter, no details. Just patient requires mobility accommodation. Privacy matters. Even in a fight. Slide 4, the deed easement. I traced the little hashed strip. Public utility easement across the front setback. HOA can't direct construction on it without coordination. Slide 5 screenshot from the app, where my neighbor asked a fair question and the post was removed within 10 minutes. Moderation, I said. And let the silence sit. Slide 6, the email Karen missent. Subject line, ramp removal plan. My name in the 2-line because there's another Noah Reed, 2 streets over, who sells patio furniture and should never open his email during a thunderstorm. You asked for receipts. I said gently. Here comes the ladder. Receipts landed like little weights. Not heavy enough to break the table, just enough to make it wobble. Karen tried to smile through it. This is out of context, she said. We conduct site safety planning all the time. Then, why is the timestamp 8:30 at night? I asked. And why does your note say, and I'm quoting, do not alert owner? A murmur threaded the room. She sucked a breath. Greg shifted in his chair. Linda stared at the carpet. Also, I said, clicking to slide 7. Invoice. The projector splashed a tidy list. Delaney Exterior Solutions monthly retainer. Paid with HOA funds. The vendor address, a mailbox at the shipping store next to the nail salon. I let that detail breathe. Karen's chin lifted. Vendors are vetted. Cool, I said. Because the state corporate registry shows Delaney Exterior Solutions isn't registered. Payment without a contract. I let that hang. Weird. Neighbors murmured louder. Someone whispered, "Are we paying her?" I clicked to slide 8 minutes from last month's executive session, where the board voted to approve urgent authority for compliance actions with no membership vote. I'd gotten those minutes from a volunteer who thought executive session meant secret forever. It does not, Karen snapped. Those minutes are confidential. I read slowly. You mean the ones where you authorize plate readers at the gate without a vote? A couple of heads jerked. Nobody had heard that part. Or the ones where you ask the committee to collect footage of problem homes. Names listed here. I blurred names because no one needs to be fresh meat at a meeting. But I read the initials, 2 older neighbors who put kid-sized chalk art on the sidewalk. A single mom whose fence leans 1 degree. And a black family on the corner, with a garden that is, frankly, gorgeous. I chose experience and systems over stereotype. You could feel the context without me saying it. Oh, come on, Karen said, voice climbing. You're making this about politics. I'm making this about power, I said, evenly. And rules you wrote for other people that somehow always skip your friends. I clicked to slide 9, a photo of a pergola taller than allowed, built in Karen's backyard, which her rules say needs approval. Approved the day after it went up. I showed the stamped form. Signed by, guess who? She tried to pivot. This is a smear. Okay, I said softly. Let's talk about the part where you put my mom's access on a timer. I hit play on a video. The room heard my doorbell. They saw the 3 polo shirts. They heard Greg order me to open access. Then they heard Jeannie say, "Don't touch, permitted work." It wasn't dramatic. It was boring in a way that only truth can be. But that boring little video did more than my speech ever could. It showed a tiny woman in a lemon robe behind me. It showed me breathing slow. It showed fake badges. It showed the part of suburbia that's a stage play until a real cop walks in. I stopped the video. So, here's the motion. I looked at the crowd. 1. Rescind all fines tied to the ramp. 2. Adopt an accessibility policy in writing by next meeting. 3. Audit vendor payments for the last 12 months with an independent CPA. 4. Call a recall vote tonight on the question of removing the president for cause. Bylaw section. Sorry, I flipped a page. Bylaw section 8. Paragraph 4. Karen laughed. Too sharp. You don't have the votes. Maybe, I said. Or maybe people are tired. Motions on the floor. The vote was messy. It always is. People fumbled proxy forms. Someone tried to film the ballot box. Jamie gently blocked the shot with her shoulder and a smile. A couple of elderly neighbors shook as they signed their names. Moms squeezed their hands as they passed. I announced the motion twice. Slow. So nobody could pretend they didn't know what they were voting on. The sun fell behind the eucalyptus line. The room smelled like old coffee and chlorine and nerves. While the volunteer committee counted, Karen paced like a general without a map. She leaned close to Greg. She whispered to Linda. She made a call she thought was private. Hissing. Where is he? I told him to keep the crew on standby. I have ears. So did half the room. Then the doors opened. Not for a new voter. Not for a pizza we forgot to order. For a sheriff's deputy in a brown uniform. Hat under his arm. Voice. Quiet. We're here on a report of potential fraud, he said. To Karen. Regarding HOA checks issued to an unregistered vendor. Her face did a funny thing. The expression you get when a magician pulls a rabbit you didn't know you brought. This is a private meeting. She tried. Cool. The deputy said. We're outside of it. He nodded toward the hall. Would you step out to talk? She didn't move. The counting ended with neat stacks. The volunteer chair, a retired math teacher named Mrs. Greer, who terrifies me more than any firefighter, cleared her throat. On the motion to rescind fines and adopt an accessibility policy carried by an overwhelming majority. Applause broke like summer rain. My chest loosened for the first time in a week. And on the recall, she said, eyes scanning the tallies. The motion to remove the president for cause carried. Silence hit first, like the air got vacuumed out. Then a couple claps. Then more. Then cheers, awkward. Relieved. A little shocked at their own boldness. It wasn't a parade. It was a neighborhood deciding to be a neighborhood again. Karen stood very still. You people, she said. The words shaped like something bitter. You don't understand what it takes to keep a community beautiful. Maybe. Mrs. Greer said. Gentle and iron. Maybe we prefer it kind. Karen gathered her binder. She tried for a grand exit. But the deputy was still at the door. She walked past him anyway. It didn't look grand. It looked small. I waited. 'Cause I mean, let the adrenaline settle. Right. Then I thanked the volunteers. I shook Greg's hand, because you can hold someone accountable and still be human. He whispered, I'm sorry. And for once, I believed him. Linda cried quietly into a tissue and said she'd resign. I didn't cheer. I just nodded. Mom rolled up next to me, bumping my hip. You drink water yet? She asked. Working on it, I said, and finally laughed. Aftermath is where most stories go soft. They land the punch, then fade, because consequences take time and, like, forms. But there were teeth to this one. The board appointed an interim president, Mrs. Greer, who runs a meeting like a courtroom and a bake sale like a military operation. The CPA audit found payments that shouldn't have been made. Not millions. Enough to matter. Enough to require a report to the state. The sheriff's office opened an investigation into the unregistered vendor scheme. I won't pretend I know how fast that spins. Government wheels grind, slow but sure. What I do know, check stop. The mailbox at the shipping store closed. The board adopted an accessibility policy by the next meeting, written clear. No weasel words. The ramp stayed. We added 2 little planter boxes along its edge, filled with basil and marigolds. Because Mom says beauty is also functional. The fines. Gone. The trash bin exposure notice, replaced by a silly apology email, clerical error, which, okay. The plate reader plan, voted down. The room laughed at it this time instead of nodding. 2 other neighbors pulled their own receipts. The single mom showed a letter where Karen threatened safety checks at bedtime unless her fence was fixed by Monday. That got reversed and replaced with a list of local handy people and a few volunteers who showed up with hammers on Saturday morning. The older couple with the chalk art now host drawing afternoons on the cul-de-sac. We brought lemonade. A kid drew a rocket on my driveway, and my mom told him it was perfect. And the part that mattered to me most, the garden on the corner kept blooming without whispered comments or phone cameras creeping by. We didn't fix a system in 1 week. Not even close. But we put a speed bump in front of it. Sometimes, that's the start. As for Karen, you'll read rumors. She moved. She's appealing. Her cousin says it's a witch hunt. I don't care to turn her into a cartoon. She's a person who thought power was a mirror and not a window. She forgot that standards without compassion are just fences around nothing. That's not villain origin story. That's a choice you unchoose daily. Last thing. On Sunday morning, I found a card on our porch, no signature. Just thank you for making space for all of us. Inside a gift card for the diner Mom loves. She laughed and said, "Hash browns." Like it was a blessing. We rolled down the ramp together. She didn't have to hop or hold her breath. She didn't look at stairs like they were a cliff. She just, lived. What would you do here?